My brother smirked, told his CEO, "This is our family's disgrace," while pointing at me during the company's annual gala, not knowing I had been hired as the new head of legal 3 days earlier and hadn't told anyone in the family yet. I'm Paige, 34 years old, and I just watched my brother Marcus destroy himself in front of 300 people without even realizing it. The crystal chandelier above cast perfect light on his confident face as he gestured toward me like I was Exhibit A in a presentation about family failures. His CEO, Richard Sterling, stood beside him looking uncomfortable but polite, the way powerful men do when they're trapped in someone else's awkwardness. "That's her," Marcus continued, his voice carrying across the marble entryway where I'd just arrived. "Dropped out of Yale Law after one semester. Been bouncing between paralegal jobs ever since. Our parents spent a fortune on her education and she couldn't even finish." He laughed, that practiced executive laugh he'd perfected. "Meanwhile, I'm VP of operations here. About to make partner. Genetics are funny that way." The champagne flute in my hand felt pleasantly cool. I took a slow sip, watching Marcus's performance with the detached interest of someone observing a car accident in slow motion. Richard's eyes met mine for just a second, and I saw recognition flicker across his face. He'd been in my interview panel 3 days ago. He knew exactly who I was. The slight widening of his eyes told me he'd just connected the dots that Marcus clearly hadn't. I'd spent the last decade building my career in corporate law at firms Marcus wouldn't have heard of, learning every trick, every loophole, every weakness in corporate structures. While he climbed the ladder at Sterling Industries through family connections and aggressive networking, I'd been quietly becoming one of the most ruthless contract attorneys in the state, the kind companies brought in to clean up messes or destroy opposition. My specialty was finding what people wanted to hide. Marcus had no idea I'd been headhunted by Sterling Industries 6 months ago. No idea I'd spent those months in intensive negotiations, reviewing every aspect of the company's legal department. No idea that Richard Sterling himself had personally asked me to take the position because he needed someone who wouldn't be intimidated by internal politics. And Marcus definitely had no idea that my first assignment, the one I'd received this morning in a confidential email, was to investigate irregularities in the operations department's vendor contracts. His department. "You're too kind to even acknowledge her," Marcus was saying now, his hand on Richard's shoulder in that familiar way he had with people he thought he controlled. "I know the company has standards. You'd never hire someone like that." I set my champagne down on the registration table and signed my name in the guest book. My new title printed neatly on my name tag, Paige Chen, Head of Legal. The woman working registration looked at me, then at Marcus, then back at me. She bit her lip, clearly wanting to say something. "Don't," I said quietly, smiling. "This is going to be more fun if he figures it out himself." The gala was being held in Sterling Industries headquarters, a sleek downtown building Marcus had given me a tour of exactly once, 7 years ago, making sure to point out that I could never work somewhere like this. The main ballroom was already filling with executives, board members, and major clients. I could see the evening's agenda displayed on screens throughout the lobby. Welcome remarks, dinner, award ceremony, and then the big announcement everyone was waiting for, the new executive team structure, the one that would include my name. Marcus was still talking, his voice taking on that edge it got when he was performing for an audience. "The thing about family is, you can't choose them, but you can choose not to let them embarrass you. I made it clear years ago that she wasn't to use our connection to try to get in here." "I see," Richard said, his voice carefully neutral. He was looking at me now, and I could see the exact moment he decided to let this play out, a slight upturn at the corner of his mouth. Marcus turned away from me, missed it completely. The folder I'd been reviewing this morning sat in my car, 40 pages of vendor contracts Marcus had personally signed, contracts with companies that didn't seem to exist when you looked past the surface. Shell corporations, inflated prices, kickback schemes so obvious they almost insulted my intelligence. He'd been skimming for at least 3 years, maybe longer. Small amounts at first, then getting bolder. The kind of thing that could send someone to federal prison. I'd spent my lunch break cross-referencing the companies with state registration databases. Most didn't exist. The ones that did were registered to a P.O. box in Marcus's neighborhood. Sloppy, arrogant, the work of someone who thought he was untouchable. "Paige!" A voice called from across the lobby. Miranda Torres, the CFO, someone I'd met during the interview process. She waved, heading toward me with a warm smile. "I'm so glad you made it. Richard said you might not come since you're still getting settled." I watched Marcus's face as Miranda approached me, watched him do the mental calculation. Why would the CFO know me? His expression shifted from confusion to concern as Miranda reached me and gave me a brief hug, the kind senior executives give each other. "I wouldn't miss it," I said loud enough for Marcus to hear. "It's important to meet the team before I officially start Monday." The color drained from Marcus's face. Richard Sterling made a sound that might have been a cough, or might have been suppressed laughter. Miranda, bless her, either didn't notice the tension or chose to ignore it. "Well, you'll have quite the welcome," she said. "Richard's announcing the new structure tonight. Your position is the biggest legal department expansion we've done in a decade." She turned to Marcus, finally acknowledging him. "Marcus, Have you met our new head of legal, Paige Chen? Oh, wait. She paused, her smile sharp. You two share a last name. Relation? Marcus's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. His perfectly styled hair suddenly looked less perfect. A thin line of sweat appeared on his forehead despite the climate-controlled lobby. We're siblings, I said pleasantly. Though we haven't spoken much lately, I've been busy with work. You know how it is. Head of legal, Marcus repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. His eyes met mine, and I saw it. The exact moment he understood. Not just that I had the job, but what that job meant. What I would have access to. What I could see. Richard Sterling cleared his throat. Yes. We're very excited to have Paige joining us. Her expertise in corporate compliance and contract law is exactly what we need as we expand. She'll be reporting directly to me with full authority to review and restructure any department's legal procedures. Any department. Marcus's pupils dilated. His hand, still on Richard's shoulder, trembled slightly before he dropped it to his side. I should mention, I said, pulling my phone from my clutch. I started reviewing files this morning, just preliminary stuff, getting familiar with current contracts and vendor relationships. Found some really interesting patterns. We should talk about the operations department first thing Monday, Marcus. I have questions. The ambient noise of the gala faded into background static. Marcus stared at me, and I stared back. No longer the disappointing little sister he'd been mocking 30 seconds ago. In his eyes, I saw the beginning of fear. Good. He should be afraid. I need to. He started, then stopped. Swallowed. Excuse me, I need to make a call. He walked away fast, nearly stumbling. His usual confident stride completely gone. Richard and Miranda watched him go, then turned to me. That was your brother? Miranda asked. The one you mentioned had complicated vendor arrangements in operations? The same one, I confirmed. Richard smiled, and it wasn't kind. Well then, this should be an interesting Monday morning. Shall we go in? Dinner's about to be served, and I believe you're seated at the head table as our guest of honor. I picked up my champagne and followed them into the ballroom, where place cards with my name and new title were already arranged, where Marcus's carefully built world was about to collapse, where everything he'd said about me being a disgrace was about to become his autobiography. Behind me, through the tall windows overlooking the city, I could see Marcus on his phone, pacing frantically, making calls he thought would help. Calls to lawyers, probably. Calls to contacts. Calls to people who couldn't save him from what was coming. I'd spent 10 years preparing for this moment, 10 years becoming exactly the kind of lawyer Marcus should have feared. 10 years learning how to dismantle careers like his with nothing but documentation and determination. And now, watching him panic while I took my seat at the head table, I realized something important. Revenge wasn't about anger. It was about patience. It was about being so thoroughly prepared that your enemy destroyed themselves the moment they opened their mouth. The evening was just beginning, and Marcus still had no idea how bad things were about to get. The ballroom buzzed with corporate small talk as I settled into my seat between Miranda and the company's chief technology officer. Marcus had slipped back inside, his phone call apparently finished, but he looked like he'd aged 5 years in 10 minutes. He kept glancing at me from across the room where he sat at a table with other VPs, his jaw tight, his movements jerky. Richard Sterling stood at the podium, welcoming everyone to the annual gala. I half listened to his opening remarks, more focused on the list I was mentally compiling. The vendor contracts were just the beginning. This morning, I'd also found expense reports that made no sense, conference registrations for events that didn't exist, and travel reimbursements to cities Marcus had never actually visited. He'd been treating the company like his personal bank account. Before we begin dinner, Richard said, I want to introduce someone special. We've been searching for months to fill our head of legal position, looking for someone with exceptional credentials and uncompromising ethics. He paused, his eyes finding mine. I'm thrilled to announce we found that person. Paige Chen joins us from Morrison & Associates, where she led their corporate compliance division. Paige, would you stand? I rose smoothly, acknowledging the polite applause. Marcus's table was silent. I could see him whispering urgently to the woman next to him, probably explaining why his sister's sudden appearance was a problem. Dinner arrived, but I barely tasted it. Marcus left his table twice more, his phone constantly in his hand. Each time he returned, he looked worse. By dessert, he'd stopped pretending to eat and just sat there, staring at nothing. Your brother seems unwell, Miranda observed quietly. Should someone check on him? I'm sure he's fine, I said, just processing some unexpected news. After dinner, Richard began announcing the new executive structure. Department heads were recognized, new initiatives outlined, expansion plans detailed. The mood was celebratory, everyone excited about the company's direction, everyone except Marcus, who looked like he was attending his own funeral. And now, Richard said, I want to talk about our legal department restructuring. In recent months, we've identified areas where our compliance oversight needs strengthening, particularly in vendor management and contract approval processes. His eyes swept the room, landing briefly on Marcus. Our new head of legal will have full authority to audit any department, review any contract, and implement whatever changes necessary to ensure Sterling Industries maintains the highest ethical standards. Marcus's face had gone from pale to gray. He gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. Paige will begin Monday with a comprehensive review of our current vendor relationships, Richard continued. We're committed to transparency and accountability at every level. The applause was enthusiastic. I smiled and nodded graciously, the picture of professional competence. Inside, I was counting the hours until Monday morning when I could officially begin dismantling Marcus's schemes. After the speeches, the gala shifted into networking mode. People drifted between tables, drinks in hand, making connections. I was immediately surrounded by executives wanting to introduce themselves, all of them carefully polite, all of them clearly curious about the new head of legal who'd appeared out of nowhere. Marcus approached during a brief lull, his expression a mixture of desperation and fury. We need to talk, now. Of course, I said pleasantly. Monday morning, my office. Bring documentation for every vendor contract you've signed in the last 5 years. You can't do this, he hissed, low enough that nearby conversations wouldn't be interrupted. I'm family. Exactly, I replied. You spent years telling everyone I was the family disgrace. Time to see what real disgrace looks like. I can explain everything. The contracts, they're legitimate. You're looking at them wrong. Marcus. I turned to face him fully. I've been reviewing corporate contracts for a decade. I know what legitimate looks like. This isn't it. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and whatever he saw made him flinch. This is insane. You're ruining my career over some old grudge. I'm not ruining anything, Shagai corrected. You did that yourself. I'm just documenting it. He opened his mouth to respond, but Richard appeared at my elbow. Paige, there are some board members who want to meet you. He glanced at Marcus with cool disinterest. Marcus, shouldn't you be preparing your department's quarterly report? I believe it's due Monday. Marcus understood the dismissal. He backed away, his phone already to his ear again, making more desperate calls that wouldn't help him. The board members were pleasant, asking about my background and priorities. I gave them polished answers, the kind that conveyed competence without revealing strategy. They seemed satisfied, even impressed. One older gentleman mentioned he'd heard excellent things about my work at Morrison & Associates. We had a contract dispute with a pharmaceutical company, he said. Your team destroyed them in arbitration. Very thorough. Thank you, I said. Thorough is my specialty. The gala wound down around midnight. Marcus left early, practically running for the exit. I stayed until the end, making connections, establishing relationships, laying groundwork. This wasn't just about destroying Marcus. It was about building something better after he was gone. Richard walked me to my car, the parking garage quiet and echoing. Your brother made several phone calls tonight, he observed, probably to attorneys. Probably, I agreed. Will that be a problem? No. Everything I've found is documented. There's no defense for it. I paused at my car door. How long have you known about the irregularities? 6 months, Richard admitted. CFO flagged some unusual patterns. We could have handed it to external auditors, but I wanted someone internal, someone with personal investment in getting it right. He smiled slightly. When your name came up in our search and I saw the connection, I knew you were perfect. You hired me to take down my own brother? I hired you to clean up our legal department. That your brother happens to be dirty is just convenient timing. He leaned against a concrete pillar. Can you do it? Can you be objective? Marcus stopped being my brother years ago, I said. Monday morning, he's just another case file. I drove home through empty streets, my mind already organizing Monday's schedule. First would be the formal review of vendor contracts, then expense reports, then travel reimbursements, then the paper trail of money flowing from company accounts to Marcus's pocket. My apartment was dark and quiet. I poured a glass of wine and opened my laptop, pulling up the files I'd started compiling. 40 pages had grown to 70 as I dug deeper. Shell corporations, fake invoices, forged signatures. Marcus had been bold. Stupidly bold. My phone rang at 2 a.m. Marcus, of course. I let it go to voicemail. He called 4 more times before giving up. The voicemails were increasingly frantic, first trying to negotiate, then threatening, then pleading. In the last one, his voice cracked. Please, Paige, we're family. Don't do this. I'm sorry for what I said tonight. I'm sorry for everything. Just give me a chance to fix this. I deleted them all without responding. Sunday morning, I went to the office. The building was empty, just security and a few weekend workers. My new office was on the executive floor, spacious and overlooking the city. Someone had already set up my computer, transferred my files, arranged fresh flowers on the desk. A welcome basket sat on the credenza with a note from Richard. Looking forward to Monday. I spent 6 hours reviewing documents, cross-referencing dates, building timelines. The pattern was clear. Almost embarrassingly so. Marcus had started small 3 years ago, just a few thousand here and there. Then he'd gotten confident, started taking more. Last year alone, he'd stolen over $200,000. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Linda, Marcus's wife. Please call me. It's urgent. I didn't call. Linda had enjoyed the benefits of Marcus's theft, the renovated house, the luxury vacations, the expensive cars. She didn't get to play innocent now. Another text came an hour later. He's talking about hurting himself. You need to stop this. Manipulation. Classic Marcus. Using Linda to play on family guilt. I put my phone on silent and kept working. By Sunday evening, I had everything organized. 3 binders of documentation. Spreadsheets showing money flows. Emails proving Marcus's knowledge of the schemes. It was airtight, unbreakable. Monday morning arrived cold and bright. I dressed carefully in my most severe suit, dark gray with sharp lines. This wasn't a day for softness. I arrived at the office at 6:30, before most of the executive team. My assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Kelly, who Richard had assigned to me, was already there with coffee. "Mr. Chen has requested an emergency meeting," she said, handing me my schedule. "First thing, he seems quite insistent." "Cancel it," I said. "I'll meet with him at 10 after I've met with the CFO and CEO. And Kelly, when I'm in meetings about the operations department, I need you to record everything. Full transcripts." "Understood." At 8, Richard and Miranda joined me in my office. I laid out everything I'd found, watching their expressions shift from concerned to shocked to coldly angry. "This is worse than we thought," Miranda said, flipping through the binders. "These companies don't even try to look legitimate. How did this pass approval?" "Because Marcus had signing authority," I explained, "and he counted on no one checking his work carefully. Classic embezzlement through vendor fraud." Richard's jaw tightened. "What's your recommendation?" "Criminal charges," I said without hesitation. "This isn't a civil matter. This is theft, fraud, possibly money laundering depending on where the money ended up." "He's your brother," Miranda said quietly. "Which is why I can't show leniency," I replied. "If I do, everything I accomplish here will be tainted. People will say I protected him. The only way forward is complete transparency and full prosecution." Richard nodded slowly. "Agreed. Do what needs to be done." At exactly 10 o'clock, Marcus entered my office. He looked like he hadn't slept. His expensive suit rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. He closed the door behind him and stood there, staring at me. "Sit down," I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. He sat, his movements mechanical. "Please," he started. "Stop." I opened the first binder. "This is your vendor contract with Apex Solutions, signed by you 18 months ago. Apex Solutions doesn't exist. It's a shell corporation registered to a P.O. box 2 blocks from your house. The money paid to Apex ended up in a personal account. Your personal account." His face crumbled. "I can pay it back." "No, you can't. You've stolen over $200,000 in the last year alone. You don't have that money anymore. You spent it." I opened another binder. "These are your expense reports. Hotel rooms in cities you never visited. Conference fees for events that don't exist. Car rentals that were actually cash withdrawals." "I needed the money," he whispered. "Linda, the house, the kids' school. You needed the money to maintain an image," I corrected. "To look successful, to impress people." I leaned forward. "You could have lived comfortably on your actual salary. Instead, you committed federal crimes. What are you going to do?" "What I'm required to do. I'm referring this to the FBI. Sterling Industries will file criminal charges. The board will vote to terminate you, probably this week." Marcus collapsed forward, his head in his hands. "You're destroying my life." "No," I said coldly. "You destroyed your life. I'm just writing the report." The silence stretched between us. Finally, Marcus looked up, his eyes red and desperate. "When did you become this person? This cruel?" "I became this person," I said, "when I realized family doesn't mean anything if it's built on contempt. You spent years making sure everyone knew I was beneath you, making sure I understood I'd never be good enough. You told people I was a disgrace, that I'd failed, that I was an embarrassment." I stood, walking to the window. "Well, Marcus, here's what failure actually looks like. It looks like a VP who thought he was too smart to get caught. It looks like a man who threw away everything for money he didn't even need." He stood, his whole body shaking. "I'm sorry for all of it, for how I treated you, for what I said at the gala. Please, Paige, I'm begging you, don't do this. Think of Linda. Think of my kids." "I am thinking of them," I said. "I'm thinking about how they need to learn actions have consequences, that you can't steal and lie and expect no punishment." Marcus left my office broken, his career effectively over. Through my window, I watched him walk to his car, shoulders slumped, a man who'd lost everything. Kelly appeared in my doorway. "The FBI field office is on line 1. They're ready for your report." I picked up the phone and began dismantling what remained of Marcus's life, one documented crime at a time. The FBI took my report seriously. 2 agents arrived at Sterling Industries Tuesday afternoon, badges clipped to their belts, asking precise questions. They spent 3 hours in my office reviewing documentation, photographing evidence, recording my statement. Marcus wasn't arrested immediately, they explained. These cases took time to build properly, but they were confident about prosecution. "This is good work," Agent Morrison said, closing her notebook. "Very thorough. Most corporate fraud cases don't have documentation this clean." "I used to work in corporate compliance," I replied. I know what prosecutors need. After they left, I sat in my office watching the sunset over the city. My phone had been buzzing all day with messages I ignored. Linda, my mother, even some of Marcus's friends from college, everyone wanting me to reconsider, to show mercy, to think about family. But they hadn't been there 10 years ago when Marcus convinced our parents I'd dropped out of Yale because I was lazy. They hadn't heard him tell his colleagues I was mentally unstable. They hadn't watched him systematically cut me out of family gatherings, explaining to cousins and aunts that I was an embarrassment. Wednesday morning brought unexpected complications. My mother called Kelly directly, demanding to speak with me. When I refused the call, she appeared in the lobby. Security called up for permission to send her to my floor. Let her come, I told them, but have someone standing by. My mother looked older than I remembered, her hair more gray than brown now, her face lined with stress. She entered my office and closed the door firmly behind her. You need to stop this, she said without preamble. Whatever you think Marcus did, you're wrong. I'm not wrong, Mom. I have documentation. He made mistakes, yes, but he's your brother. Family protects family. I gestured to the chair. She remained standing, arms crossed defensively. Family protects family, I repeated. Where was that philosophy when Marcus told everyone I was mentally ill? When he convinced you and Dad I was wasting your money on therapy instead of school? That was years ago. He was young, stressed with his own career. He was 27, hardly young. And I was 22, dealing with the aftermath of his lies. I opened my desk drawer, pulled out an old photograph. Marcus and me as kids, his arm around my shoulders, both of us grinning at the camera. You see this? This is what I remember. Before he decided I was competition. Before he started tearing me down to make himself look better. My mother's expression wavered. He didn't mean to hurt you. Yes, he did. Every comment about my failures, every joke about my career, every time he introduced me as his struggling sister at family events, that was intentional. I set the photo down. And now he's paying for more than just the theft. He's paying for a decade of cruelty. So this is revenge. No, this is justice. The revenge is just a bonus. My mother left without another word. I knew what would come next. The family pressure campaign, cousins calling, grandparents weighing in, everyone insisting I was tearing the family apart. What they wouldn't acknowledge was that Marcus had torn it apart years ago. I was just refusing to pretend anymore. Thursday, the first news article appeared. Local business reporter covering Sterling Industries noticed Marcus's sudden absence, called it a leave of absence pending internal review. By Friday, the story had spread. Business journals picked it up. Someone leaked that the FBI was involved. Marcus's name appeared in headlines alongside words like fraud and embezzlement. Richard called me into his office Friday afternoon. The board met this morning, he said. Marcus has been terminated. His employment ends today. Security already escorted him out. How did he take it? About as well as you'd expect. Lots of threats, accusations, crying. He tried to blame you, said you fabricated evidence because of personal grudges. Richard leaned back in his chair. Of course, when the board reviewed the documentation, it became clear he was lying. Again. What about his wife? Linda filed for divorce this morning. Her attorney called our legal department to confirm the FBI investigation. I think she's trying to distance herself before charges are filed. Smart of her. Though it wouldn't help much if prosecutors proved she'd known about the theft. That weekend, I finally visited my apartment mailbox. Mixed in with junk mail was an envelope with Marcus's handwriting. Inside, a single page. His writing shaky and desperate. Paige, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect you to read this. But I need you to know I understand now. I understand what I did to you, how I treated you, how wrong I was. I'm losing everything. My job, my marriage, probably my freedom. And you know what the worst part is? I deserve it. Not just for the theft, for everything before that. For making you small so I could feel big. For telling lies about you because I was afraid you were smarter than me. You were always smarter. I just couldn't admit it. I don't know what happens next. My lawyers say I'll probably go to prison. Linda took the kids to her parents' house. Our accounts are frozen. I'm living in a motel and can barely afford that. I'm not asking for mercy. I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I finally see it. What I became. What I did to you. What I did to myself. I hope your new job goes well. I really do. You earned it. You earned all of this. Marcus, I read it twice, then filed it with the rest of the case documentation. His words changed nothing. Regret after getting caught wasn't the same as genuine remorse. If he'd never been caught, he'd still be stealing, still be lying, still be treating me like garbage at family events. Monday of my second week, I implemented new vendor approval protocols. Every contract over $10,000 required legal review. Every vendor had to pass enhanced verification. Department heads grumbled about the added bureaucracy, but Richard backed me completely. If this prevents another Marcus situation, he told a meeting of VPs, it's worth the extra paperwork. The reorganization kept me busy 12 hours a day. New staff to hire, systems to build, relationships to establish. I barely had time to think about Marcus or family drama, which was exactly how I wanted it. 3 weeks after the gala, Agent Morrison called with an update. We're filing charges next week. Wire fraud, money laundering, theft from an organization receiving federal funds. He's looking at 10 to 15 years if convicted. And if he takes a plea, depends on what he offers, but probably minimum 7 years. 7 years. Marcus would be 45 when he got out. His kids would be teenagers. His career would be destroyed. His reputation obliterated. Everything he'd built on lies and theft, gone. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I felt nothing, just a cold, empty certainty that this was how it had to be. That evening, Tyler stopped by my office. Tyler Grant, the chief financial officer I'd met during my interview process. We'd been having coffee occasionally, discussing department coordination, building rapport. He was intelligent, funny, divorced, no kids, and clearly interested in more than professional collaboration. You've been working too hard, he observed, leaning against my doorframe. When's the last time you ate something that wasn't delivered to your desk? Breakfast, I think. That was 14 hours ago. He held up a bag from the Italian place down the street. I brought reinforcements. Have dinner with me. We can call it a working meal if that makes you feel better. I glanced at my computer screen. The spreadsheets and reports that could wait until tomorrow. Okay. But actually working, I need your input on the new vendor approval matrix. We ate in my office, paperwork spread between us, discussing cash flow controls and audit schedules. But eventually, the conversation drifted to Marcus. How are you doing with all of it? Tyler asked. The family situation, I mean. That can't be easy. It's easier than everyone thinks it should be, I admitted. I stopped thinking of Marcus as family years ago. This just made it official. Your parents must be struggling. They chose a side. They chose wrong. I set down my fork. You know what the hardest part is? Not the prosecution or the family drama. It's that everyone expects me to feel guilty, like I did something wrong by reporting crimes. You didn't. I know. But society has this thing about family loyalty, like blood relation somehow trumps basic morality. I laughed without humor. Marcus stole hundreds of thousands of dollars. He committed federal crimes. But I'm the bad guy because I turned him in. Tyler reached across the desk, his hand covering mine briefly. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. The only thing, really. The moment stretched between us, something shifting in the air, professional interest becoming personal. Before I could respond, Kelly knocked, apologizing for the interruption. A board member was on the phone needing immediate consultation about a contract issue. Tyler gathered the dinner remains. Tomorrow then. Coffee, my office, 8 a.m. We can finish the vendor matrix discussion. After he left, I handled the board member's crisis, then worked until midnight getting ahead on Friday's deadline. The city lights glittered below my window, the office silent except for the hum of electronics and distant traffic. My phone buzzed with a text from Linda. Marcus was arrested today. FBI showed up at the motel. Thought you should know. I typed back. Thanks for letting me know. Nothing else. What else was there to say? This was always where it would end. Marcus in custody, facing justice. Me in this office, building something better from the ruins of his career. Thursday brought Marcus's arraignment. I didn't attend, but Agent Morrison called afterward with details. Marcus pled not guilty. No surprise there. Bail set at $500,000, which he couldn't make. He'd remain in custody until trial, probably months away. His attorney tried to throw you under the bus, Morrison said. Claimed you fabricated evidence due to family grudges. Judge wasn't having it. The documentation is too thorough, too detailed. Defense collapsed before it started. That evening, I met my parents for the first time since my mother's office visit. They'd requested dinner at a neutral restaurant, somewhere public where scenes wouldn't be made. I arrived on time, professional, but distant. My father looked exhausted. This has gone too far, Paige. Marcus is in jail. His children ask about him every day. Linda's family is threatening to pursue custody. Those are consequences, I said calmly. Natural results of criminal behavior. He's your brother, my mother said, her voice breaking. How can you be so cold? He stopped being my brother when he decided I was an obstacle to his success. I'm just someone who documented his crimes. That's my job. Your job is to protect the company, not destroy your family. The company needed protection from Marcus. That's why they hired me. I set down my menu. I'm not going to apologize for doing what's right. If that makes me the villain in your story, I can live with that. Can you live with your brother in prison? My father demanded. Can you live with him being a thief? I countered. Because that's what he is. Not a man who made mistakes. Not someone who deserves another chance. A thief who stole for years. Who lied to everyone. Who would still be stealing if I hadn't stopped him. We didn't order dinner. They left angry, probably to tell relatives how heartless I'd become. Let them. I knew the truth. I'd spent 10 years rebuilding myself after Marcus's lies nearly destroyed me. Now I was thriving, and he was paying the price for underestimating me. The only question that remained was how much worse it would get before the end. The trial date was set for 8 months away. 8 months of Marcus sitting in county jail, unable to make bail, watching his life disintegrate from behind bars. His attorney filed motions trying to get evidence excluded, trying to claim I'd somehow tainted the investigation through personal bias. Every motion was denied. I spent those months rebuilding Sterling Industries' legal department from the ground up, hired 6 new attorneys, all of them sharp and hungry, implemented systems that made fraud nearly impossible. Richard gave me complete authority, and I used it. Within 4 months, we'd become the model other companies studied. Tyler and I fell into an easy relationship, professional during work hours, personal after, dinner twice a week, coffee most mornings, occasional weekend hikes when I could spare the time. He never pushed, never demanded more than I was ready to give. Just steady, reliable presence. You know, everyone in the building thinks we're dating, he mentioned one evening over Thai food in my office. Are we wrong? I asked, meeting his eyes. No, he admitted, smiling. I guess we're not. The relationship felt different than anything I'd experienced before. Built on respect and shared values rather than passion or need. Maybe that was better. Sustainable. Real. Marcus's preliminary hearings happened throughout those months. I attended one, sitting in the gallery, watching him shuffle in wearing an orange jumpsuit, his wrists shackled. He looked thin, defeated. Nothing like the confident executive who'd mocked me at the gala. His eyes found mine in the courtroom. No anger now, just hollow resignation. He'd finally understood. This was happening. His trial would proceed. He would lose. And I wouldn't save him. Agent Morrison testified at that hearing, walking the judge through the evidence. Bank records, shell corporations, forged signatures. Marcus's attorney tried to create reasonable doubt, suggesting maybe someone else had access to Marcus's credentials. Maybe the transactions weren't what they appeared. The judge wasn't impressed. Counsel, the defendant personally signed these contracts. His personal accounts received the funds. The IP addresses traced to his home computer. What exactly is your theory here? The attorney had no good answer. The hearing ended with the judge denying bail reduction and setting parameters for trial. Marcus was let out, and I left the courthouse feeling nothing. No victory, no sadness, just cold certainty that justice was proceeding exactly as it should. 4 months before trial, Linda's divorce was finalized. She got the house, full custody of the kids, and protection from Marcus's legal debts. Smart move. Marcus lost his appeal, fighting the divorce, probably realizing too late that Linda had been his best shot at character witnesses. My parents stopped speaking to me entirely. No calls, no texts, no birthday acknowledgement. Fine. I had work, Tyler, new friends among the executive team. I didn't need people who valued blind loyalty over integrity. The week before trial, Richard called me into his office. I want to prepare you for what's coming, he said. Trial will be ugly. Defense is going to attack you personally, claim this is all revenge motivated. They'll drag up every family incident they can find. Let them, I said. The evidence speaks for itself. Still, prepare yourself emotionally. They'll try to make you look vindictive. I am vindictive, I replied honestly, but that doesn't change the fact that Marcus committed crimes. Trial began on a cold Monday in November. Federal courthouse downtown, jury selected, judge presiding. I sat behind the prosecution table, Tyler beside me for moral support. Marcus sat at the defense table, looking smaller than I remembered, his suit hanging loose on his reduced frame. Opening statements laid out the case clearly. Prosecution walked through the scheme step by step, using charts and timelines showing money flowing from Sterling Industries to shell corporations to Marcus's accounts. Simple, straightforward, damning. Defense tried a different angle. Their opening statement focused not on innocence, but on victimization. Marcus was overworked, under pressure, suffering from mental health issues. The company had created an environment that pushed him to extremes, and his sister, harboring old grudges, had weaponized his mistakes. Paige Chen wanted revenge, Marcus's attorney told the jury. Her brother was successful when she wasn't. He had the life she wanted. So when she got the opportunity, she destroyed him. She took normal business transactions and twisted them into a criminal narrative. I watched the jury's faces. Some looked skeptical. Others seemed interested in this alternative story. That was fine. The evidence would settle it. Prosecution called their witnesses methodically. FBI agents explaining the investigation. Accountants detailing the money trail. Sterling Industries employees describing approval processes Marcus had bypassed. Each testimony built on the last, creating an unshakable narrative. On day 3, they called me to the stand. I swore to tell the truth, took my seat, and faced Marcus across the courtroom. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Jennifer Hayes, walked me through my credentials, my hiring, my discovery of the fraud. When did you first realize something was wrong? Hayes asked. My first morning reviewing department files. The vendor contracts immediately stood out as suspicious. Companies I'd never heard of, unusual pricing structures, No competitive bidding documentation. What did you do? Started investigating. Cross-referenced vendors with state registration databases. Most didn't exist. The ones that did were registered to addresses connected to my brother. Your brother? Hayes emphasized. How did that make you feel? Professionally? Concerned that such obvious fraud had gone undetected? Personally? I met Marcus's eyes. Disappointed, but not surprised. Defense attorney jumped up. Objection. Non-responsive and prejudicial. Overruled, the judge said. The witness may continue. Why weren't you surprised? Hayes prompted. My brother has always prioritized appearance over substance. Looking successful mattered more than actually being successful. These fraudulent transactions fit that pattern. Hayes walked me through the evidence piece by piece. Each fake company, each forged signature, each stolen dollar. I explained it all calmly, professionally, like I was discussing someone else's case. Then came cross-examination. Marcus's attorney approached with practiced hostility. Miss Chen, you and your brother don't get along, correct? Correct. In fact, you harbor significant resentment toward him. I harbor no resentment. I have clarity about who he is. You blame him for problems in your life, don't you? Failed relationships, career struggles? I blame him for nothing. I credit him with teaching me that family means nothing without respect. The attorney pressed harder, trying to rattle me. Isn't it true you dropped out of Yale Law School due to mental health issues? I left Yale Law to pursue a different path. The mental health issues were a story my brother told to make himself look better by comparison. So you admit you resent him. I admit he lied about me for years. That's documented fact, not resentment. And when you got the opportunity to hurt him, you took it. When I discovered crimes, I reported them. That's my obligation as head of legal. The attorney tried for 2 hours to break me, to make me look vindictive or unstable. I answered every question calmly, letting the evidence speak. By the time cross-examination ended, even the skeptical jurors looked convinced. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Defense tried everything. Expert witnesses claiming the transactions were legitimate, character witnesses saying Marcus was honest, even Marcus himself testifying that he'd made accounting errors, but never intended to steal. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous on all counts. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Marcus collapsed in his chair, his attorney catching him before he fell completely. The judge set sentencing for 3 weeks later, remanding Marcus to custody until then. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I gave a brief statement. Justice was served today. Sterling Industries is stronger for having addressed this corruption, and I'm proud to have played a role in that process. Someone asked if I felt bad about my brother going to prison. I feel bad that he made choices that led here, but consequences for criminal behavior aren't negotiable. Family connection doesn't create immunity from justice. Tyler drove me back to the office, his hand finding mine as we navigated downtown traffic. How are you doing? Fine, I said honestly. This is what had to happen. Your parents were in the courtroom. Back row. I'd seen them. My mother crying, my father's arm around her shoulders. They'd left before the verdict was read, unable to watch Marcus convicted. They'll hate me forever, I observed. Probably, Tyler agreed. Can you live with that? Easily. 3 weeks later, sentencing day arrived. The courtroom was packed with reporters, Sterling Industries executives, Marcus's former colleagues. My parents sat in the back again. Linda wasn't there. She'd moved across the country with the kids, starting over somewhere Marcus couldn't find them. The judge reviewed the case with clinical precision, noting the premeditation, the duration of the crimes, the breach of trust. Then she looked directly at Marcus. Mr. Chen, you held a position of significant responsibility. People trusted you. The company trusted you. You betrayed that trust repeatedly over years, stealing not because you needed money, but because you wanted more than you'd earned. The harm you caused extends beyond financial loss. You damaged people's faith in institutional integrity. You hurt your family. You hurt yourself. She sentenced him to 12 years in federal prison, with restitution of $375,000 plus interest. No parole eligibility for at least 8 years. Marcus wept openly, his shoulders shaking. The bailiffs helped him stand, preparing to take him back to custody. Before they led him away, he looked at me one last time. I saw it all in his expression. Regret, hatred, understanding, despair. He'd finally grasped what I'd known all along. You can't build a life on cruelty and theft. Eventually, the foundation crumbles and you fall harder than anyone you hurt. He wanted me to react, to show some emotion, to give him satisfaction of knowing he'd hurt me one last time. I gave him nothing, just calm, professional observation, as he was led away to spend the next 12 years paying for his choices. Outside the courthouse, my mother approached. Her eyes were red, her face aged by stress and grief. "Are you happy now?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Your brother's life is destroyed. He destroyed his own life," I replied. "I just refused to cover for him. He's family, Paige. That should have mattered." It did matter. That's why I wanted him to face consequences. Real family holds each other accountable. She turned away, unable to meet my eyes. My father waited by their car, looking smaller and older than I'd ever seen him. They drove away without another word, and I knew I'd never hear from them again. Tyler appeared beside me. "You okay?" "Perfect," I said, meaning it, because I was. Marcus would spend years in prison, losing everything he'd valued, his reputation, his career, his freedom, his family, and I was standing in the sunlight, head of legal at a Fortune 500 company, respected and successful and free. The revenge was complete, not because I'd destroyed him, but because he'd destroyed himself, and I'd been there to document every moment of his fall. The weeks after sentencing brought unexpected peace. Marcus was transferred to a federal facility 3 states away, far enough that prison visits would be difficult for anyone who still cared. The news cycle moved on to other scandals, other crimes. Sterling Industries held a press conference emphasizing their commitment to integrity and transparency, with me prominently featured as the face of their reformed legal department. Richard called me into his office one Friday, 4 weeks after trial. "The board met yesterday. They want to expand your role. Chief Legal Officer, seat at the executive table, significant raise." "What about the optics?" I asked. "Promoting someone who just sent her brother to prison? The optics are perfect. You put justice before personal relationships. That's exactly the message we want to send." He slid a contract across his desk. "Think about it over the weekend. But Paige, you've earned this. What you've built here in 6 months is remarkable." I read the contract that evening in my apartment, Tyler cooking dinner in my kitchen. The compensation was substantial, the authority even more so. I'd be one of 5 people running a billion-dollar company, reporting directly to the board. "You're going to take it," Tyler observed, not really a question. "Yes, good. You deserve it." He plated pasta, adding the mushrooms I loved. "Your mother called my office today." I looked up sharply. "What did she want?" "To tell me I'm dating a monster, that you destroyed your family for career advancement." He set a plate in front of me. I told her I was dating the most ethical person I'd ever met, and hung up. "She won't stop. None of them will. I'm the villain in their story forever. Let them tell whatever story they need. You know the truth. The truth. Marcus had committed crimes. I'd reported them. Everything that followed was consequence, not revenge. Except that wasn't entirely accurate, was it? Because I had enjoyed watching him fall. I had savored every moment of his realization that I was smarter, stronger, better than he'd ever given me credit for. But was that wrong? After years of his cruelty, wasn't I entitled to satisfaction when justice finally caught up with him? I signed the contract Monday morning. The announcement went company-wide by noon. Congratulations flooded my inbox, executives welcoming me to the leadership team. I responded professionally to each one, already planning the strategic initiatives I'd implement from my new position. That evening, a letter arrived from Marcus. Prison mail, opened and inspected by corrections officers before forwarding. His handwriting was the same, but shakier, less confident. Paige, 12 years. That's 4,380 days. I counted. I spend most of my time in the prison library, reading legal journals, trying to understand where I went wrong. Not just the theft, though I understand that now too. I mean where I went wrong with you, with us. I remember when you were 10 and I was 15. You wanted to be a lawyer even then. You'd watch legal dramas and explain to me why the attorneys were arguing wrong strategies. I was proud of you. Proud of my smart little sister. When did that change? When did your success start threatening me? I've had a lot of time to think about it. And I finally understand. It wasn't when you did anything. It was when I realized you were smarter than me, better than me. And instead of celebrating that, I tried to destroy it. The stories I told about you dropping out of Yale, they weren't just lies. They were preemptive strikes. I was afraid you'd finish law school and show everyone what I always knew, that you were capable of things I could never achieve. So I sabotaged you before you could make me look bad by comparison. And it worked. You left Yale, struggled for years, rebuilt yourself from nothing. While I climbed the corporate ladder on connections and charisma, you were actually learning, actually becoming the person you'd always wanted to be. By the time you got hired at Sterling, I'd convinced myself my success was earned and yours was luck. But standing in that ballroom, mocking you to my CEO, I was actually mocking my own inadequacy because you'd earned that position. You'd become the lawyer you always wanted to be. And I was just a fraud pretending. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know I finally understand. You didn't destroy me. I destroyed myself piece by piece, lie by lie, theft by theft. You just refuse to help me hide the evidence. If there's any justice in this, it's that you're succeeding wildly while I'm here. That's how it should have been all along. You were always better. I'm sorry. For all of it. I know it doesn't change anything, but it's true. Marcus, I read the letter 3 times, searching for manipulation, for hidden angles, for anything except genuine remorse, but it seemed real. Raw, honest in a way Marcus had never been. It changed nothing. He was still in prison. I was still chief legal officer. The past was still the past, but something in me softened slightly, just enough to acknowledge that maybe, eventually, there might be something beyond anger. I filed the letter with the trial documents, a footnote in a closed chapter. 6 months into my new role, I was interviewed by a legal industry magazine. They wanted to know about ethics, about navigating family complications in professional settings, about building integrity into corporate culture. The hardest thing, I told the interviewer, is that people want moral ambiguity. They want to believe that sometimes you can compromise ethics for family loyalty, but you can't. Ethics are absolute, or they're nothing, even when it costs you personally. Especially then, if you only have integrity when it's convenient, you don't actually have integrity. The article ran with the headline, "The Price of Principle: How One Attorney Chose Justice Over Family." It sparked debate in legal circles, forums, social media. Some people praised my commitment to ethics. Others called me heartless. I didn't care about public opinion. I knew what I'd done and why. That was enough. Tyler and I got engaged a year after the trial. Small ceremony, no family on my side, just colleagues and friends. We honeymooned in Scotland, hiking through highlands, visiting castles, disconnecting from everything for 2 weeks. On our last night there, sitting in a pub overlooking a loch, Tyler asked the question I'd been avoiding. Do you ever regret it? How things went with Marcus? I considered the question seriously, turning my whiskey glass in my hands. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that he made choices that led there, but I don't regret reporting his crimes or testifying against him. What about your parents? Your family? They made choices too. They chose to defend a criminal because he was family. I chose to pursue justice because it was right. We're all living with our choices. 2 years after the trial, I received another letter from Marcus. He'd enrolled in prison education programs, earned an associate degree in business ethics. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Paige, I teach now, ethics class to other inmates. Most of them think I'm a hypocrite. They're not wrong, but maybe that's what makes me effective. I know exactly how people justify crossing lines. I lived it. My parole hearing is in 6 years. I don't expect to make it, given the severity of my crimes. But I'm preparing anyway. Getting education, staying clean, building a record of rehabilitation. Not because I think it'll change your opinion of me, just because it's the right thing to do. Funny how clear that concept becomes after you've spent years paying for getting it wrong. Linda brings the kids once a year. They're strangers to me now. My son is 13, playing soccer, getting good grades. My daughter is 10, wants to be a scientist. They're better without me in their lives, and I know that. But it hurts to realize your children are better off forgetting you. You were right about everything. The theft, the lies, what I did to you, what I did to myself. You were right to turn me in. You were right to let me face consequences. You were right to refuse to save me from my own choices. I hope you're doing well. I saw the article about your promotion to chief legal officer. Congratulations. You earned it. You earned everything you have. I'm genuinely proud of you. I know I have no right to be, but I am. Marcus. This letter I didn't file away. I kept it in my desk drawer at home, taking it out occasionally, reading it when I needed to remember that people can change, even if it's too late to change what they've lost. 3 years after the trial, the legal magazine that had interviewed me asked me to contribute to an anthology about professional ethics. My chapter focused on the intersection of personal relationships and professional responsibility. I wrote about Marcus, about the case, about the choice between family loyalty and ethical obligation. But I also wrote about growth, about building integrity into systems, about creating cultures where corruption becomes impossible. In the end, I concluded, ethics aren't about choosing between good and evil. That's easy. Ethics are about choosing between good and good enough, between what's right and what's convenient, between principle and comfort. And if we're going to build systems that deserve trust, we have to be willing to make hard choices, even when they hurt people we love. The anthology became required reading in law schools nationwide. Students debated my choices in ethics classes. Some thought I was heroic. Others thought I was cruel. I thought I was simply someone who'd done what needed to be done. 4 years after the trial, Tyler and I bought a house in the suburbs. Good schools, safe neighborhood, room for the family we were planning. I was chief legal officer at Sterling Industries, respected in my field, financially secure, professionally fulfilled. Everything Marcus had wanted, I had achieved. The difference was I'd earned it honestly. One Saturday afternoon, working in my garden, planting roses along the fence, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Then curiosity got the better of me. Hello, Paige? A woman's voice, familiar but distant. Linda. I'm sorry to call out of the blue. I got your number from Sterling's public directory. Linda, is something wrong? I don't know. Maybe. Marcus is sick. Really sick. Prison doctors found something in his lungs. They're calling it aggressive, saying he needs treatment they can't provide in there. My hands stilled in the dirt. What are you asking me? His attorney says there's a process for compassionate release, medical reasons, but he needs someone outside to advocate for him, to provide documentation of where he'd go, who'd support him. And you want me to do that. I know it's a lot to ask, given everything. But Paige, whatever else happened, he's still dying. And I don't think he should die in a prison cell. I sat back on my heels, looking at the roses I'd been planting, thinking about justice and mercy, about consequences and compassion, about the difference between what someone deserves and what you're willing to give. I'll think about it, I said finally. But Linda, I need you to understand something. If I help, it's not forgiveness. It's not saying what he did was okay. It's just acknowledging that he served enough time, that mercy is appropriate. I understand. Thank you for considering it. After we hung up, I sat in my garden for a long time, thinking about choices and consequences, about revenge and closure, about the person I'd become in the years since that gala. I'd gotten everything I wanted: professional success, financial security, personal happiness. Marcus had lost everything. The revenge was complete. Justice had been served. So why was I even considering helping him? Because revenge was about him, and I was done letting my life be about him. This decision would be about me, about who I wanted to be, about what I could live with. I called his attorney Monday morning and asked what would be needed for compassionate release: documentation, testimony, proof of housing, and support upon release. It would take months, maybe longer. No guarantees it would be approved. I'll provide what's needed, I told the attorney. But understand this: if he's released, there will be conditions. He stays far from me. He doesn't contact me. He rebuilds his life somewhere else. This isn't reconciliation. This is just refusing to be cruel when cruelty is no longer necessary. The attorney agreed to communicate the terms. That evening, I told Tyler what I'd decided. He listened quietly, then asked the important question: are you doing this because you want to, or because you feel like you should? Both, I admitted. I don't owe him mercy. But I don't want to be the kind of person who withholds it when someone is dying. There's a difference between justice and cruelty. He's had justice. Anything beyond that is just sadism. And your parents? They'll see this as vindication, proof you were wrong all along. Let them. I know why I'm doing this. That's enough. The paperwork for compassionate release took 6 months to process. During that time, I learned more about Marcus's condition than I wanted to know. Stage 4 lung cancer. Metastasized. Terminal. Doctors gave him 2 years at most. Probably less. I provided the required documentation, proof of housing, a facility that would accept him, medical care arranged through my insurance network, financial support structured through a trust that couldn't be misused. Every detail handled professionally, creating a framework where mercy wouldn't enable further harm. The prison review board approved his release 8 months after Linda's call. I wasn't there when he walked out, didn't want to see his freedom, didn't need that closure. Tyler drove to the facility and transported him to the care home I'd arranged, following the terms I'd established. He wanted me to thank you, Tyler told me that evening. I told him you didn't want to hear it. Good. He asked if he could write you. No, that's what I said. I never saw Marcus again. Linda sent me occasional updates, honoring my request for minimal contact. He lived 18 months after release, quiet and alone, attended by hospice staff. He died on a Tuesday morning, spring rain falling outside his window. Linda called to tell me. He spent his last few months writing letters to the people he hurt, the companies he stole from, everyone, apologizing, explaining, trying to make amends. He wrote you one too. Do you want it? No, I said. Whatever he needed to say, it doesn't change anything. I hope he found peace, but I don't need to know about it. The funeral was small. I didn't attend. My parents probably said I was heartless for that too, but I'd given Marcus mercy when he needed it most. I'd refused to let him die in prison. That was enough. I didn't owe him my grief. 5 years after Marcus's death, I stood in the Sterling Industries boardroom, leading a presentation on the ethics compliance program we'd built. The room was full of executives from other Fortune 500 companies, all wanting to learn from our model. The key, I told them, is making integrity systemic. You can't rely on individual ethics. You have to build structures that make corruption impossible and transparency inevitable. Afterward, a young woman approached me, a newly hired legal counsel from a competing firm. Miss Chen, can I ask you something personal? You can ask. The Marcus Chen case, the one they teach in law school ethics classes. That was your brother, right? Yes. How did you do it? Turn in your own family? I considered the question, thinking about the years since that gala, about everything that had happened, everything I'd learned. It wasn't about turning in family, I said finally. It was about refusing to become an accessory to his crimes. Family doesn't mean covering for wrongdoing. It means holding each other to higher standards, not lower ones. But the cost, your relationship with your parents, your brother's life, the cost of covering for him would have been my integrity. That's not a price I'm willing to pay. I met her eyes directly. The hardest thing about ethical behavior is that it costs you. Sometimes it costs you a lot, but living without integrity costs more. The young attorney nodded thoughtfully and walked away. I returned to my office, 20 floors up, windows overlooking the city where this had all begun. Tyler was waiting. Takeout dinner from our favorite restaurant spread across my conference table. How'd the presentation go? Good. They're implementing our framework next quarter. I kicked off my heels and collapsed into a chair. Someone asked about Marcus. They always do. I know. It's strange being known for that. Like my entire career is defined by turning in my brother. Your career is defined by building the most effective ethics compliance program in corporate America. Marcus just happened to be the catalyst. Tyler handed me chopsticks. Do you ever regret how it all played out? I thought about that question. One I'd asked myself countless times over the years. Thought about Marcus's wasted potential, my parents' continuing estrangement, the family that had shattered completely. I regret that it was necessary, I said finally. I regret that Marcus made choices that led there. I regret that my parents chose loyalty to a criminal over relationship with the daughter who did the right thing, but I don't regret my actions. Given the same circumstances, I'd do it all again, even knowing what it would cost, especially knowing what it would cost, because that's what integrity means, doing the right thing, even when it's expensive. We ate in comfortable silence, the city lights beginning to sparkle as evening fell. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hi Paige, this is Michael, Marcus's son. I'm graduating college next month, business degree, with a focus on ethics. Funny, right? Anyway, I wanted you to know. And to say thank you for what you did, for teaching me that family loyalty doesn't mean protecting people from consequences, for showing me what real integrity looks like. I hope we can meet someday. I stared at the message for a long moment, emotions I couldn't quite name swirling through me. Marcus's son, thanking me for sending his father to prison, finding value in the lesson rather than holding grudges about the cost. I typed back, congratulations on your graduation. I'd like that. Tyler read over my shoulder. Are you sure that's a good idea? I don't know, but he's not Marcus. He's his own person, making his own choices. And if he learned something valuable from the disaster his father created, then maybe something good came from all of it after all. 2 weeks later, Michael Chen walked into my office. A young man of 22 with his father's features, but none of his arrogance. We talked for 2 hours about business ethics, about the choices that defined careers, about building success on honesty rather than shortcuts. I spent years angry at you, he admitted. Angry that you sent my dad to prison, that you broke up our family. But then I got older, started understanding what actually happened. He wasn't a victim. He was a criminal who got caught. I'm sorry you had to learn that about your father. I'm not. Better to know the truth than live a lie. He pulled out a worn copy of my ethics anthology chapter. I read this in my business law class, the part about choosing between right and comfortable. That resonated with me. That's what you did. You chose right, even though it wasn't comfortable. Your father taught me that lesson, I said quietly. He spent years choosing comfortable over right. I saw where that led. I decided to go a different direction. Michael left my office with a job offer to join Sterling Industries' legal department after he passed the bar exam. Not nepotism, not guilt, just recognition that he'd learned from his father's mistakes and had the potential to be exceptional. That evening, alone in my office after everyone else had left, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was a single photograph, the one of Marcus and me as children, his arm around my shoulders, both of us grinning. I looked at that photo for a long time, thinking about the boy who'd protected me on the playground and the man who'd tried to destroy my career, thinking about how people change, how ambition corrupts, how fear turns loved ones into enemies. Then I placed the photo in an envelope and sealed it, not throwing it away, but putting it aside. The past couldn't be changed, but it didn't have to define me anymore. My phone rang. Tyler asking if I was working late again. Just finishing up, I told him. Be home in 20 minutes. Good, I made your favorite dessert. You're perfect, you know that? I know, but it's nice to hear you say it. Driving home through familiar streets, I thought about the journey from that gala 5 years ago to this moment. The girl who'd been mocked as family disgrace had become chief legal officer of a Fortune 500 company. The brother who'd thought himself untouchable had spent his last years understanding the true cost of his choices. Justice had been served. Not just legal justice, but karmic justice. Marcus had gotten exactly what he'd earned through lies and theft. I had gotten exactly what I'd earned through integrity and hard work. The revenge had been complete. But more importantly, the transformation had been real. I'd gone from being someone's victim to being someone's role model. From damaged to powerful. From dismissed to respected. And Marcus? He'd gone from corporate vice president to federal prisoner to hospice patient, each step down a consequence of his own choices. His legacy wasn't success or family or achievement. His legacy was a cautionary tale taught in ethics classes about what happens when ambition exceeds integrity. My parents never contacted me again after Marcus's death. I heard through distant relatives that they'd moved to Florida, starting over somewhere their son's crimes weren't known. That was fine. I'd built my own family from people who valued truth over comfort. Sterling Industries thrived under the ethics framework I'd built. Other companies copied our model. I spoke at conferences, published papers, trained the next generation of corporate attorneys. My professional success wasn't just about career advancement anymore. It was about creating systems that prevented others from falling into the same traps Marcus had. Sometimes late at night, I wondered what would have happened if I'd said nothing. If I'd covered for him, protected him, let him continue stealing. How much more would he have taken? How many more lies would he have told? Where would it have ended? But those thoughts never lasted long, because I knew exactly where it would have ended. With me complicit in his crimes, my integrity destroyed, my career built on corruption. That person, the one who covered for family regardless of cost, I was glad I never became her. Instead, I became someone who understood that real love sometimes means refusing to enable harm, that justice matters more than comfort. That integrity isn't about being perfect, but about making hard choices when principles conflict with convenience. Marcus had taught me that lesson, though not the way he intended. Through his betrayal, his theft, his ultimate destruction, he'd shown me exactly who I never wanted to become. And for that twisted lesson, in the end, I was almost grateful. Almost, but not quite. Because some wounds don't fully heal. They just scar over, becoming part of your history but not defining your future. Marcus was my scar tissue now. Present, but not painful. Remembered, but not controlling. I pulled into my driveway, the house warm with light, Tyler visible through the kitchen window. This was my life now, built on choices I could defend, success I'd earned honestly, relationships based on mutual respect. Marcus had wanted to make me feel small, to prove I was less than him. Instead, he'd motivated me to become more than he ever could have imagined. His cruelty had forged my strength. His lies had clarified my values. His fall had elevated my rise. The ultimate revenge wasn't that he'd gone to prison. It was that I'd built everything he wanted on a foundation he could never understand. Integrity. And I'd done it all without compromising who I was, without becoming the person he'd tried to make me believe I was, without giving him the satisfaction of destroying me. I'd won, completely, permanently, irreversibly, and Marcus, wherever he was, knew it.